Hello and welcome back to Elliott's podcast. It's the beginning of January and we are in the Groundhog Day syndrome. No, it's not as bad as when the pandemic started, but that's why I'm not saying the date. It's just the beginning of January. It is what it is. In Toronto, we are not supposed to. Well, they've closed indoor dining mainly, and what else? Yeah, a lot of activities are closed. So it just socially it's kind of a mini lockdown. But I hope everyone, and wherever you are, it's probably becoming similar. That's kind of how this thing works. It's a global phenomenon, the waves that come through, and I just hope that everyone is doing well and finding ways to stay mentally stimulated or physically with exercise and that sort of thing. It's very important. So, and hopefully this episode will have some insight that I think might be helpful as you structure your creative work in the month of January and beyond. So the structure of the episode is that I last week I played 2 songs. I'll just do one this week, and I will do that at the end of this after I do my talking. Always got to get some talking in. So the first thing I want to talk about is that I was on Instagram last night and I was watching some of the videos that it recommends me through I think they're reels. Excuse me. The reels are, for now, they're all guitar based, and I was a little perplexed that they are the stuff that is kind of trending is basically 4-second guitar licks. Like, the videos are super short, and that's mainly referencing what TikTok is, and that's all referencing what the younger brain is looking for. And I've been in this weird state of like trying to not be critical of it and open, but also being realistic with myself and my interests, is that like that's not very, I'd call it low calorie intake media. Like, it's to think like in high caloric intake of media would be, this sounds super snobby, but something like a symphony or a free jazz album, things that really take your focus and your energy. And I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I want to just highlight that. Well, I guess I am insinuating that, because typically we don't, I mean, when I say low caloric intake, I'm kind of referring to snacks and junk food. And I am making an insinuation, and it's just basically another way of saying that I'm getting old, and I recognize that. But it makes you think about a lot of stuff, and the pressure for a creator to, like, I don't know if I will make a guitar lick. I don't really feel comfortable with a 3-second video, but it's very clear that if you want to be featured in algorithms, you need to do what they want. Do as I say. And it's tricky. And I guess mostly I'm committed to going deeper with music, and the track I'm going to play at the end is a track that I'm just about finished and I'm getting ready to release. And it definitely goes into that space that I'm always looking to go towards. And I'm sure I will find a way to satisfy algorithms and to make things that work well for people who like to swipe through feeds, because that's how a lot of people are spending their time. And I would say definitely my last 2 releases lend themselves. They had vocals in them and they were more fun and upbeat. They lent themselves to that world, but it's not necessarily what I envision. And I guess the long and short of all this part of what I'm talking about is my continual renewal of faith that this idea that the world we often feel like we're being left out of experiences and lifestyles that are passing us by. We look through these windows of our phones and we feel left out, and it really is an opportunity to shine the light back inwards and to not let it stick to you. The fact that we go onto a network and an algorithm shows us stuff because it's catchy. The work is for someone to not, it's not it's not the social network's fault, and it's not the fault of people who make the content, the snack sized content. It's none of the responsibility for all this type of stuff is on you, and in the way you respond, and the way you pick consciously what you want to consume, and to consciously spend your time in a way that is taking you where you want to go. And so one of the things I'm doing lately is I'm actually tracking my time from wake till sleep in half an hour increments. And I use a Notion. I made a template. I might share it soon. It's a template in Notion that I fill in on a spreadsheet what I did in every half an hour block. And it was very illuminating because I started this during the holidays, and I was a little depressed at first because I'm like, whoa, I'm wasting a lot of time, especially on vacation time. It's easy to get into the rabbit hole of sitting on the couch and swiping. And I would say that the time tracking was illuminating when I started doing it, and it continues to be, because when I have to fill in a few blocks that said that I was on Instagram looking at crap, low quality content, then I have to be honest with myself, and the onus becomes, can I build better habits for going where I want to go? And that's the next thing that I want to talk about is I had a real light bulb moment just from listening to higher caloric information this week, and that was from Huberman Labs. Andrew Huberman, he's really amazing, a neuroscientist from Stanford, and he's all over YouTube, and he's been featured on a lot of alpha male style channels and stuff, and for good reason, because he's featured on those types of channels because he helps with the idea of optimizing your day and your life and what you put in your body and all that stuff, and specifically around the chemicals from the brain and dopamine. So he's been featured a lot, and I've seen in his videos, his voice is often remixed and put into like those other videos. There's all these channels on YouTube that just take voices from like inspirational people, and then they make their own video and they get a lot of views, and those people probably make a lot of money off of other people. But at the end of the day, the message gets out, and I guess it's fine. But so just to say is, if you don't know the name Huberman and then you look him up and you'll be like, I know exactly what you're talking about, don't be surprised. But I listened to his podcast this week on the science of building and breaking habits, which he released, I guess, just after New Year's, and he recorded it before New Year's. So it's very good. Everyone's thinking about habits at the time of the new year. And habits have been a big thing for me, routines and habits, because for me personally, goals. Sorry, I'm just trying to get comfort. I don't like sitting in a chair, but I had to sit in the chair because I'm going to play music and I can't really play music on the floor. So the goals don't really work for me in the way that, like, they're easy to fudge around and like to switch the goal around and hijack. So I found that if I work on habits and routines, it's a lot more productive. So that's why I structure a lot of things that I help other people with around that idea as well. And it's become very popular. I mean, the book Atomic Habits, I saw James Clear has been sharing lately that it was the best selling book on Amazon last year. And that book was out even before, like it was probably a year or two before that. I read that a long time ago, Atomic Habits. And there was also Charles Duhigg a few years before that was something like the Science of Habits. I don't know. So it seems like, and that was a really popular book too. That one was the one that had a lot of info about cue, reward, and something else. Trigger and reward, cue. But this Huberman podcast, I think, really smashed it, for lack of better words. And I'll tell you why it really spoke to me is that it highlighted for me the issue of the afternoon and why the afternoon is such a junky period and how we can better optimize the afternoon. And he doesn't go into extreme detail about this is stuff that I synthesized from it. But the point of it is that he says in the podcast that the day is kind of split up into three quadrants, and the first quadrant is the first 8 hours after you wake up. And so that what's happening in the first 8 hours is that dopamine is being released and also cortisol. And dopamine is best thought of as the chemical that helps with motivation. And in many ways, dopamine is used to motivate you to stay on your phone and hijack you if we look at what happens through technology. But in its raw form, dopamine is sort of the science of wanting and getting towards something and all kinds of, there's a lot of stuff with dopamine. So the dopamine's being released in conjunction with the light coming in from the sun. And if you don't live in a bright climate, you better be blasting yourself with light in that morning to simulate the sun. Sorry, I have to touch my phone because it's reminding me to track my time. I set a reminder 3 times a day to track my time. Okay, so I'm just a nerd, all right? I'll come out and admit it right now. And this is the thing I wanted to asterisk this whole thing about Huberman and science is you don't want to be pigging out on science information. That this is not the point of life, is to be fully optimized. Like the Tim Ferriss podcast, he has this like corny intro, and it's like optimized human, and Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I know Tim even probably knows it's corny. He can't be not self-aware. But that's the problem with life hacking and all that stuff, is it's like it's missing the more beautiful half of life, which is the mistakes and that's the art and life is not all about science, but science helps illuminate why, like it almost helps explain certain things we had hunches about, and that's what I'm about to talk about. So that the first 8 hours of the day, there's dopamine and cortisol, and this is the time of day when you have the best shot of doing work that what Huberman calls has limbic friction, which means that there's more resistance to doing it, more resistance from getting your mind to get your body to do the action. And so with more limbic resistance, you're better off tackling harder tasks earlier in the day. And then after the 8-hour mark, the dopamine starts to turn off. And this is where what we call our horrible afternoon experience. And our society expects us to keep doing work in the afternoon. But what's happening is the dopamine is turning off, and I think the cortisol as well. And I think cortisol is a stress hormone, but you can tell these are like the hormones of action. And then serotonin is starting to come into the picture, which I believe is more of a social type of hormone. And calming is kind of what I understand. That might be more of it. I should have looked it up before, but again, I don't do research. I just talk here on this podcast. But the gist is that after 8 hours, your body is preparing to descend like an airplane going back into the airport, into the next city. It's preparing to descend for sleep in the final phase. And the final phase is mostly sleep. So the afternoon is a wind down period. So I'm understanding that the best structure of the day would be, don't expect to do the hardest tasks in the afternoon. I would imagine more bigger term visioning and journaling could be more beneficial. I typically did a lot of that in the morning in the past, but after learning this, I realized that I'm kind of squandering a lot of time that can be spent for really going after difficult tasks. I would call a difficult task like finishing a piece of music. What you might want to do is in the afternoon and evening, you can poke around with coming up with an idea and putting the rough pieces together. And then in the morning, you can go through and finish it is an example. For you, you know, doing completely other types of work, you might want to just fill in the blanks, like afternoon, evening, take a more relaxed approach to work in these times. You do not expect that you can rack your brain and push through unless you are structured, unless your body is structured as night owlism, and that you are somehow releasing dopamine in these later quadrants. But I think that people are often fighting it in that case, and that's why people caffeination. And keep in mind, there are people who do shift work. That means they are going to work at night. So there's a lot of caveats to all this stuff about when exactly dopamine is being generated, and if people are on complete different schedules. But I'm saying for me, and I've talked about in previous weeks, I've restructured myself to be a morning person. And this explains why the afternoon is hard and how to do some better, more appropriate work and think about things that involve the collective. This is my insinuation from what Huberman says. He never says this specifically, but think about doing work that involve the collective. And for example, me recording this podcast, it does take limbic friction. But for me to do it is a social, and even though I'm sitting by myself here, the bigger picture of the podcast is a social type activity. I'm trying to have a conversation by myself, but it's a form of building community around certain ideas that I work with. One of them being exactly what I'm talking about, and the other is the music that I'm about to play. And it happens, I happen to be recording this in the afternoon on a Saturday. So that was one part of the podcast. The podcast is quite long. I think a lot of his are. But the other thing that was interesting is time independence was another part of his thing on habits. And that is there was people had said in some books that like you have to, like if you want to build the habit of practicing guitar, you have to practice every day at the same time, and that's the habit is, and you structure around that routine. But Huberman was suggesting that you can actually test the strength of your habits based on, are you able to be context independent? Meaning, could you play guitar at 7 a.m. or 7 p.m. or 9 p.m. right before bed? And I've had to do that in the past few weeks with I'm trying to make sure I play guitar every day, and sometimes I put it off until before bed, but I'm able to do it. So that means I'm strengthening the habit that I play guitar every day. And so that was a big thing too in this, is this context independence. Finally, I will, before I wrap this section up about what I learned from the Huberman podcast, is there is a reason why you always hear about these stories of executives who get up early and work out every morning. And it's even in the Twila Tharp book. The Creative Habit is the book title. And Twila Tharp is a choreographer. and she has her creative habit was the cornerstone habit was getting up and going to the gym every morning in a taxi cab in New York, a boxing gym or something. And the science is sort of starting to highlight why we hear a lot of these high performing people have this cornerstone habit. I think because it's the habit of exercise early in the morning is stacking with the dopamine secretion. And then I think what Huberman said is that the exercise also then excretes norepinephrine, I think is the name of the way you put it. And so my understanding is that now if you have all the chemicals generated first thing in the morning, your willpower is a lot stronger to go after even heavier duty tasks, and probably you probably get even a longer window is maybe an insinuation that I'm going to make on that. But the long and short of it is that exercise is very important in that, and that's why it's one of the most talked about habits across any industry or practice, is like just being more active. And one thing that Huberman said, I think in not in this one, but another video that I happened to have watched, was that a good habit is to actually go for a walk right after you wake up. And that was actually a nice thing for me to learn about, and I've been doing it for the past week because it's super cold right now in Toronto, and it's actually good for you to get the cold temperature similar to cold showers, which if you live in a hot climate, you can simulate that. But the walking around first thing in the morning is good for the getting the motion on your retinas is helps calm your amygdala, which is your fear, the center of your brain that's prehistoric and has a lot of fear in there built in for good reason. And I can't get into that now. And a lot of people are very well aware of amygdalas and the lizard brain by now. But the going for a walk helps calm it. So you could even use that any time of day, really, if you're a little anxious. That might explain one of the reasons why a walk is very calming is this motion and so all this to say is that I enjoyed the part of the podcast involving this working with the 8-hour window a little better. And I suggest this interests you, that you listen to it for yourself and not have to take in the information secondhand from someone who knows almost nothing about neuroscience and just because Andrew does. He researches his. I mean, it'd be funny if he wasn't even a Stanford professor, and he was a complete, and he didn't research anything. But he says that it's based on peer-reviewed science. And sorry, I just found that pretty funny to think about. If he was basically like me, like no clue what he was talking about. And I'm just repeating everything that he's saying, but that is not true at all. It's very clear that that it's not just that he says this stuff based on research, but that it makes sense too. And that's why I took to the information, because I always wondered, how can I better use the afternoon time? And that explains why people like to probably schedule meetings in the afternoon. It probably works better for the way that the brain is structured, or what's happening in the brain, in the body. It's getting ready to go to bed. And so meeting with people is probably better. It's probably better to do that in the afternoon than in the morning, when you actually have the best shot at getting work done. And that's probably why it's a buzzkill for people who have work at companies that are trying to meet with them all morning and they just want to get stuff done. They can't. And then they're stuck trying to get stuff done in the afternoon, and their willpower is blown apart from all these factors. So yeah, and again, as I said, I'm not a huge. Most of my reading is not necessarily in specifically science based books and pop psychology. I've read different stuff over the years, and it's all good, but take in a mix of all kinds of ideas. And but one thing I will highlight is it does kind of show you that if you compare the experience of going on Instagram and seeing 3-second guitar licks versus a long 2-hour podcast on the topic of habits, you're much more inspired. And it inspires me as someone who I work on music that is can be very weird, and I would prefer to do longer pieces of music that really doesn't mix well with a world that wants everything snap super quick. But there's room for everyone. If you make long form, deeper content, there's still ways of tapping into the attention span, the goldfish 3-second attention span. That's what they say that we have online, is the attention span of a goldfish. There's rooms for everything. Something that I like to I don't talk about it a lot. If I don't think I've ever talked about it, but I've been working on it. It's the idea that if you look at a safety pin, just like a pin, a safety pin could easily represent your experience, what you've learned in your experience in the world, based on basically what we were taught by our families and our school and the culture and religion that we grew up in. We know a safety pin, and the whole world is the room around the safety pin. The universe, everything is like such a vast expansion beyond what we know. Another analogy would be if you're hunting around a room in the darkness with a flashlight. This one's commonly used as well to explain it, and also Plato's cave, the allegory of the cave, also does it. If you go into a dark room with a flashlight, you see like a little bit of stuff at a time. And again, that represents the little bit that we know. And that's why, and the reason I'm saying this is that when we talk about like how to promote yourself online, or what people want, short form, long form, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's just, that's what I'm saying about being open, and don't say I'm a long form person. I can't take in the goldfish videos, the goldfish attention span. It's like turn the flashlight onto a floodlight type width, and start to turn on the lights completely. And I think that's why I have to catch myself when I'm like doom scrolling, and I'm like, God damn, the world is really falling apart in the way of like, and I'm not even the type that's scrolling through a lot of politics and that stuff. Like, I'm just even looking at the basics of all the information. Yeah, if you even got into the politics, you definitely would say the world is completely falling apart. But anyways, I'm not sure how I got onto that that tangent, but with the falling apart. But you basically you sleep on it, and this is the last bit I'll talk about before we head over to the music. Is that I was watching the Instagram guitar licks last night, and then I also watched some YouTube, which is dangerous because it's and I watch YouTube on like 1.5 speed. People actually do that to my videos. I used to get I had some tutorials up online like Arduino stuff, and people, the comments would say it was a great video when you watch it on 2 speed. And I never took offense to that. Oh, my low battery mode. Hope this makes it. Come on. Low power mode. I never took offense to that because I watch other people's videos at 2 and 1.5 speed, but I was taking in so much information, and I was like, God, this is really depressing. This was information about like promoting your music and stuff, and I was like, oh, this is never gonna happen. No one's ever gonna listen to my music. And so you just sleep on it. And I woke up and I was like, okay, everything makes sense. Like the 4-second videos are there just because for entertainment, and people want quick entertainment, and there's a lot of positives to that. Different types of people playing guitar in different styles and showing different guitars. There was all good. And the advice that I got started to make sense when I really learned how to put it in its compartment. But one thing that I'll leave you with is that I watched a video that was, it was on, I don't know why I was watching this, but it was like validating your business idea in 48 hours. It was by Noah Kagan. He does AppSumo. He's a pretty good guy. I don't have any real problems with Noah Kagan. He's a genuine, and he was talking about how to pick a niche for when I was watching it, I was like, this is so, this is very internet get rich quick type stuff, involving like researching keywords and then like pitching products and prototyping. Like it's very different mindset than if you're like, I'm passionate about something and I want to sell it. This is like, I'll pick the way he thinks is like, pick any. You don't go based on what you're passionate about. You're based on what the market wants. And he's showing all these ways of validating if people will buy this thing. But so the video was like not really jibing with me at that moment, even though I understand a lot of the mentality and the stuff with it, that the intention. And then I slept on it. And I was like, one bit of the video actually stuck with me, made a lot of sense for other stuff. And that is that the whole thing about the 48 hours was that he doesn't want people spending a month or 2 months trying to pick an idea and validate it, because they're just going to eat up 2 months doing that, or they'll eat up a year or 2 years. They're just going to keep putting off validating the idea. And so I realized I was like, that's actually a pretty good time window for finishing a piece of music, because it's not like I've done music in 2 hours, and it's actually so pretty good, but because I don't like when a composition drags on too long, and you really can't. There's a window when you can work on it, and then when that window is over, you're not really coming up with new ideas. And I was like, actually, 48 hours is pretty brilliant, because you could start a song and almost finish it in one session, and then sleep on it. So your brain puts everything back together, and then the next day you can finish it. And that's what's happening with this piece that I'm about to play, is that I'm in the stage where I'm recording guitar. And so I'm going to play guitar over the piece. And it's currently named Silent Syd. Is the name. I just don't know why I came up with that name. Just before I get there, the thing with the 48 hours is, think about how that could be used for any project. Is that you would maybe just set a deadline of 48 hours to make something, and you're definitely boxed into a window that's more realistic than giving yourself 4 hours. And then if you gave yourself 2 weeks, the time just gets squandered. You're going to be on Instagram and TikTok for most of those days. So anyway, so I'm going to get going now. And so this is codename Silent Syd. We'll see if that name sticks when it gets released. And I'm going to plug in my phone. It'll be a quick camera cut, and I'll have my guitar in my hands. So thank you for listening. Thanks for my patrons, Adam and Todor. I really appreciate it. So you can support me on patreon.com/Feinberg. And that helps just give a little nod to what I'm doing. And I prepare exclusive stuff now for that. And I really like this idea of doing exclusive for Patreon. So anyways, thanks again. And we will see you next week. I do this every week. All right, take care.